Yo, oh, how's it going?
Well, there's been a mix-up today. It's been like Zoom hell, which is not post-COVID doing my nutting. It's been weird. Um, I'm
No
still,
stress on my side, man. All good.
I'm still struggling. Why? I said to God this morning when I woke, if James is such a fan, why can't I get original pieces from him? Why God did he smite me in this way? Why? You got it, you man. I'm struggling here, man. You know what it's like running this gallery? It's
Hey, I don't wish gallery on anyone. That's a job I would never ever want. But hey, I
yeah.
didn't pick.
I know, but we're trying. We're trying to change it. We're trying to do well. We're trying to get on. We just got we've got a solo show from we've got a wonderful artist from Switzerland working with glass, which is
Class.
which is pretty cool. And yeah, that's been pretty crazy. But yeah, man, how have you been, man? How have you been?
I'm crazy times, right? I mean, I'm excellent personally. Um, just totally randomly, we've been avoiding this whole COVID thing for the last 2.5 years, whatever it's been. My whole family, we've been slipping by, and then yesterday, my wife tested positive for the first time.
Oh
So my
shit!
wife and my 2 daughters are in quarantine. I'm kind of
Oh
looking on the barrel of probably getting into quarantine here in the next 3 days. But hey, life goes on. It is what it is.
wow. Well,
Yeah,
it's been a long time since we spoke.
it has.
Last time I saw you was in Berlin, and I think it was for God, it was Ableton. I think they were doing
I
they
can
were
tell you exactly when it was because I have a picture of you with my 5-year-old daughter on your lap, and she was about 2 then. So,
wow. Wow.
yeah,
Well,
been a minute.
it's been a minute. I mean, obviously you blessed us with some prints for the gallery, which I'm really grateful for. I'm still fighting to get originals.
Hey, man,
And you haven't got time.
you know what it is? I was thinking about this because I knew this would come up. It's like it's like this, right? I feel like I don't know you super well, but I feel like I have an idea of the way you work. You're very good at kind of piecing things together and like just getting the ball going and making sure the ball's always moving. I work in a different way. I'm like, just getting the ball going is like, for me, it's really difficult. And all these paintings behind me, they're very small, and I can do small pieces, relatively quick. But
Small's good. Small's good
yeah,
for
but
us.
yeah, but quick for me is still a couple of weeks. The bigger paintings that I've been doing lately take a
Look,
month
I
or
don't
two.
mind. Look, I give it. It's as a b-boy, and you know where I come from. It's my job as a curator to try and help, try and
Yeah,
hinder and get on the heels of you and try and, get some love and just try and get paintings because, you know, age is a different beast for us.
yeah.
We really we're not no disrespect to the opera gallery and all those guys that have got banks backing them. I'm an artist with a great partner and a fantastic gallery manager, Leon, and we genuinely love art. But we're really trying really hard to keep it moving because you've got to keep it moving. We have a kind of museums type status now. We've had COVID for 2 years. We had a lot of art. But and now we're here, and we're like, right now, let's sell some. Now COVID's over, let's get going. We've been blessed with having artsy. Artsy's been good for us,
Yeah.
and that's been good for a lot of artists. I think Everett's doing a good job with that. And you know what it's like. You've only got so much time for paint to dry. You've only got so much wall space. But interviewing, I think one of the things for me talking to artists, interview is the wrong word. You've always been a big kind of lover of the music, and I found it fascinating. Where the cover for the book, but a lot of people don't know this. But the first edition of 9 Lives, I heard a remarkable interview, and it was of you, and I think
Was it Findak?
it was Findak. It was
There you go.
it was a podcast you and Findak did, and you were talking about stuff, and you were talking about artists and stuff and music. I think my name came up, And I was like, damn, James likes drum and bass music like shit. Like, wow, okay. So he came up, and of course you were saying about these drawings that you were doing, these pencil drawings, which were phenomenal. And you know, it's really weird. I've got to locate where the hell that is. Because it's driving me crazy. I think you sent me a scan. Or I'm not sure it was I don't think it was the original.
You have the original. I sent you the original.
So if I have the original is either with a guy called Sav who scanned it and it was sent back to me. So it's got to be somewhere deep in the but trust me, memorabilia is my middle name. There's bedrooms full of it. But getting to the point really that I was so overwhelmed with that. And I think the connection between art and music, you know, we grew up on hip hop and I grew up on, you know, 80s rap music and everything else. But then all of a sudden, all the 90s came all of a sudden. And, you know, I kind of put the spray can down and started doing another kind of wild style. And it started being something else. And, you know, finding this love in the music was really important to me and metalheads and everything else. But it's more about you. I found that there are a lot of cut and paste artists that can do graphic stuff and they can apply the technology to the art and they can print it out. And even with the way that I break down stuff, I've kind of looked at that and printing out lined work and the idea of technology and what it does. But with you, you're thinking one of those true fine artists, fine contemporary artists that does stuff that is mind-blowing. You know what I mean? Like, I look at this stuff. I look at, you know, Voider as well, working with oils is always fascinated me. I mean, he's breaking balls. I think he's doing amazing stuff. You know, I think I'm kind of in the Findak land of doing line work and stuff. Whereas the fine art, and I spoke to you about this so long ago, it fascinates me with scaling, how you very quickly adapted to scaling on cherry pickers, which still, with all of my dyslexia and all of my kind of uncomfortability with it, like, how the fuck? You know, I'm like, okay, so we can, you know, we can blow it up and we can project, but this is different. This is lining it out differently. And it's a whole other science for me that I find, like doing like, you know, doing like a 30-foot mural by 10 foot's like enough for me. I'm like, wow. But when you're talking about 80 foot tall, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I forgot the black. I've got to go back down again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know,
no, there's none of that, man. None of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that for the audience of Aurum followers that love getting insights from artists, when you first started doing large scale kind of fine art pieces, that weren't kind of graph orientated from the graffiti world, which is not. It's totally a ball game. Photorealism, if you like, taking it to a level which is hyper-realism, I feel, beyond the photograph. Was it daunting doing this?
You know what? Actually, when I first started, so I moved to Berlin about 11 years ago to be a painter. Like, I moved here with the idea that I want to be an artist. I was a teacher in the States before that. So when I got here, I just kind of hit the ground with very little experience. And I just thought I'd be painting in the studio, but I quickly met some guys that were, you know, going to abandoned spaces and painting the walls and stuff. And I just kind of started doing it with the can. And I went there to paint graffiti. But then when I left, I looked at the wall and I painted hands and faces and things, because that's just...
But you had no experience of hands and faces before, you say?
No experience of using a spray can, none of it. It just all kind of came naturally to me. And then once I realized, oh wait, I can do this. I can paint sort of realistic imagery, which is what I was doing in the studio anyway. Then we immediately went big. There was no like, how do I go big? It just, the first few walls I did were the size of, you know, an interior wall. And then very quickly I connected with another guy and we just started trying to get big walls. And we were doing, you know, 60, 70 foot high walls pretty quickly. It all just kind of started happening. And we didn't know anything. We didn't know how to drive a cherry picker. We didn't know how to use the cans. We didn't know how to project. We didn't know any of it. We just took the jobs and the people would say, can you do this? Yeah, we can do it. And then we got there and we're like, all right, So
All
how
right.
do we do this?
How do we do
It
this?
was just
But
that
were you,
simple.
yeah, did you move into, were cans very disposable for you at that point? And did you move it into, I see a lot of artists, whether it's Cobra or whether it's, other artists that I know doing big scale stuff are using spray guns. It became a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
Were you moving into just mixing color in spray guns and going for the big compressor shit and going wide scale? Is that
You know what? I'm going to show you something. So I just finished the show for Miami a few months back, and they were the biggest paintings I've ever done. They were, more or less 4 by 5 feet or something, 120 centimeters by 170 or something. And these are the brushes that I use to paint the whole thing. I can't go big. Like, I'm a detail-oriented guy, and if I'm painting a picture this big, I still use the tiny, tiny brushes.
wow.
Like these tiny guys. And the same thing goes when I'm painting walls. When I'm painting walls, I'm up there on the 14th story of a building, putting highlights on eyelashes and thinking to myself, this doesn't matter. No one's ever going to see this, but it's just the way I work.
But so you're still using aerosol can for shading.
For mural work, I use almost 100% spray paint. I only use wall paint for a sort of background color.
Yeah, to fill out a backspace, and it's something that's like base chunk. I mean, I think from a Puritan point of view, if that word even exists within the metaphor of what this is, I'm still fascinated with the idea of scaling, whether you're using squiggle technique or how are you just dividing in grids. Is that the idea that what you're doing? Because that's a massive art form to itself. My brain does not read it. It's just the weirdest thing. It's like, so I've got to grid the wall. Okay. I was speaking to Cez, and says him about doing, Mr. Sens about how he scales. And he's like, well, I've got this app that I scale over and it's translucent. And it gives me this app, right? You must have known.
Yeah, it's overlay app or something.
Overlay. And I'm still like, yeah, forget it. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what? I've done them all. I've done all the techniques. The best, most precise and easiest for me is just projecting. But you tell someone I projected the outlines of this mural, and you can see in their eyes when you tell someone that, they're like, oh, okay. It kind of, for them, removes some of the magic.
No, but I disagree. This is the thing. I completely disagree. And however we edit this, I can't get the projector to go that big.
Most people can't. That's what I mean. It's an art form in itself. If I gave you the picture and the projector and said, here, good luck, nobody can do that unless you've done it and done it and done it.
I don't know. Well, that's a conversation me and you have to have, because it's really fucking me up. It's like, I've got some images, I'm like, I just want to go big with it. And I'm like, great images. And I separated every layer. We spoke about this maybe 5 years ago. But I can't get it. It just goes. That's it. That's it. You ain't gonna go any bigger. So that's really fucking me up at the moment. We'll talk about that. But
workshop it. We got it.
We got it. But to the point, I think that even when your prints went into Aurum, into the print shop, because the print shop's been great, they just went. Because I think that when people see the difference with your work, whether someone puts it on Instagram as a small square, when you see it in real life, it just does something. It's something that art can't do anyway. There's nothing else can do it like the art does it. You look at
that's partly the oil paint. Like, that's the magic of oil paint. That's why when you go to a gallery and see an oil painting, there's something about it that you just see like, wow, it looks like it's breathing somehow. It looks ultra realistic. The colors are almost too buttery and glowing, and that's just something that it can never be replicated on the phone or on a screen or something.
It's not. There's a depth to it. But did you find that working with acrylic was a thing for you, or you just kept it oils, or was it like, I'm just not going to go there? It's a certain DJ wants a certain weight in the record, right? We like 190 gram records. And then CDs came along, and I was reluctant for a very long time until sound engineers got it right. But for you, has oil been your thing? Is it a thing that even when I was a kid, you know, every kid touched an oil painting set at one point, but it was like, it ain't drying and I'm smudging it.
Yeah.
How do you?
Yeah.
How do
I started out when I started deciding to paint. I was in my late 20s when I first even had the idea to start making paintings. And back then they were very more sort of graffiti influence, abstract, just colors and shapes and stuff. And all of that was just with house paint on found wood that I had in my house. But I knew that I wanted to start painting like more realistic things in there. I wanted to put figures and stuff. And there was a guy in my neighborhood, an older guy that was like a classically trained oil painter. And I saw some of his stuff, and I just kind of started working with him to figure it out. So there was never an attempt to paint with acrylics in that way. It was immediately, when I want to start painting this way, I know this guy that does it in oil, let me just have him show me how to do it. So it was just that. And then I never turned back. And if you give me acrylic paints now and ask me to paint something nice, there's no chance. I can't do it. It's like, it's just a completely foreign object to me. So
wow.
It doesn't.
Well, for anyone that doesn't know James's work, Mr. Bullow's, I always get the pronunciation is terrible.
Yeah, it's Bullough, by the way. It's
Mr. Bullough. Mr. Bullough, he's definitely not Mr. Magoo. Mr. Bullough's work. I've always said James Bullow's. James Bullough's work. There's one thing you've got to understand about James Bullough's work is not only, you know, the caricature aspect is one thing, but this started slicing everything up.
Yeah.
What is it about dissection for you, which is really interesting? Is it almost like the middle finger to graphic work today, where it's like every image is sliced and it's repatriated? What is it about you shifting body parts in this way?
You know what? There's a few different ways I can answer that question. As you know, like influence comes from lots of different places. And I can talk about how I first sort of slowly, step by step, by taking an image and shifting it and sliding it, sort of gradually, technique-wise, got to where I'm at. But since I'm talking to you of all people, I want to take a different sort of route to here, because it may sound like a false statement what I'm saying, but drum and bass had a huge influence on me in my early days of painting. When I started painting, there was never a time where I was working on a painting and drum and bass wasn't played. And that sort of glitchy, like stuttery beat slipped into my work even before I was doing the figurative stuff. As I said, it was a lot of just shapes and colors and stuff, but it was always these repeating, echoing shapes that were kind of doing this thing. Then I got into realistic painting, and none of that came with me. I was just trying to learn how to paint. But once I got that locked in, I was immediately looking for a way to kind of like, all right, so I don't just want to be an oil painter who paints a bowl of fruit or a portrait. I want something. I want to do something.
Well, that's become your signature. That's become, you know, the shifting of it's almost this shifting which has been so synonymous with you. But I can see that connection, because I remember there was an early painting which Billy Zane has, which was on the inside sleeve of Timeless, and it was a stretched image of me, which I wanted to paint lines with the pixelation, and kind of have these glitches that just appeared in the way that the new graphic world was coming. Do you know what I mean? So for you, doing the caricatures are one thing, but surely it's like 5 or 6 times the work, because you're you're repeating an image once again. You not only are you doing something that's figurative, you're absolutely redoing another section and shifting it along and repainting it not once but maybe twice in that motion.
And not only that, but multiplying things. I mean, look at this piece I'm working on now. It's not finished, but you can kind of see it's there's, for every time I have to paint a hand and make it right, I've got to paint it again and again, and a foot and just keep doing these things. So it's certainly more difficult. I mean, if there's one characteristic of me, it's that I like to find ways to make everything more difficult and take longer. But it's just the way I've always kind of it's just the way I do things.
I know. I think it's very unique. So would you say that the assembly of your mind, the way that your mind is the Mac? You know, you got on one end of the scale, you've got this absolute fine art, which I'm as a not a critique, but as an observer and a fan, I see this real fine art that's challenged by, in some aspects, scale, and in some aspects of from this small piece, which is finite, oil, but then the glitching, which is your signature. How does that, for you, repeating the hand or the foot, even though there must be slight subtle, you know, they're not exactly the same, but that's the beauty of, you know, so when we look at the human face in the mirror, one eye is bigger than, smaller than the other. We just don't see it. So
Right.
On the time scale for you, you know, like, is there no time? Are you in a vacuum of your own doing?
Well, it comes back to the first question you asked me about getting work from me, and my. So I see myself as a traditional oil painter because that's sort of the techniques that I learned. Most people that paint in that way, they maybe paint 4, 5, 6, 8 paintings a year, depending how big they paint. And for oil paintings, I paint relatively big for some of my work. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, I got thrown into this lane of like urban contemporary, you know, like street art, urban art. And in that world, a lot of artists like yourself, like Findak people we've talked about, are doing stencil work or whatever, more graphic work that they can produce 30, 40, 50 paintings a year. And I'm in that lane. I'm trying to keep up with these guys, but painting in a way that is more realistically, maybe if I really want to put my heart and soul into every piece, I probably can only do 6 or 7 a year. And that just doesn't fly. So I'm definitely on time restraints with everything. I've got deadlines, I've got shows, I've got commissions, I've got people waiting years and years for paintings, and I want to fulfill that commission. But, you know, I've also got kids, then COVID comes. You know, I'm right now in the middle of moving studios. So I'm constantly feeling that pressure, which is unfortunate because I often wonder if I just had as much time as it needed to do a piece, what might I be able to produce, you know? And if I didn't know that I got to finish this because I got to get that one and blah, blah. But I don't know that I'll ever have that time. But it is an interesting aspect. And, you know, you brought up Voider's name before. Him and I have chatted a few times because I'm always keeping my eye on people in this subgenre who are doing more sort of traditional painting techniques. And there's not a lot of us. And whenever I see one, I reach out to him and we you know, we start a little talk. We've never met. But I'm always curious with him because he's putting out, you know, he doesn't have 2 kids like I am, but he's getting a good output going, which I like.
Say to him, man, you know, I mentioned you to him. You know, you are, I guess, what the drum and bass world is for me and people. You know, you're kind of, you know, you're godlike, man. You are, you know, you've done this crazy shit. You know, how long you've been doing it, let's face it. And you like me, we just, you know, we're subtle with it. We're like, you know what, we don't give a fuck, we care about the art. Music and art have always been a thing that me and you have always been into in that sense. But, you know, he's a big follower of your work. And I see a younger version, like you said, without the kids, you know, and it's just, do you see the idea of origination for him? The idea of the smeared shower, which is so unique. You know, I've not seen it anywhere. In the same way I've not seen splicing in the way that I've seen graphic people try and cut it up. But they can't do what you do with shadow and all of this stuff and the way, the depth of oil. And I think that you're a leader within that lane of these young contemporaries, fine art contemporaries that are labeled in the urban thing. But, you know, he's going to blow, that guy. He's coming up. And I guess he's going to face the same shit that you've had to go through.
Yeah. You know, one of the other things he's going to have to face, hopefully not, but something that I've found is that it is a bit of a strange spot, as you said. Like, I've because I paint on walls and I use spray paint when I'm outside, I got grabbed into the urban contemporary scene where my studio work probably doesn't really fit there as well. Maybe it should be more in a traditional art gallery type of thing. Maybe. I don't think so, and I wouldn't want it that way. I like it this way. But it does kind of put me on this weird edge of some people don't know how to, if they they might like it, but in their house with all of their street artwork that they really love.
I think it's the opposite. I actually think it's the opposite, because you're in a strange place, which is a good place to be. It's lonely. Like it's lonely doing what we do, right? It's a very lonely place because, you know, coming outside of drum and bass where you're in 6th gear and then you leave the gravity of it. There's nothing else there. So you just kind of, what do? You know, and conceptually you can do anything. But of course, there's a lack of understanding from the genre it came from, where like the classics, like the Raphael paintings, for example. You know, one thing that Brad, you know, Void said to me is that he went to Italy and he went on his journey and he went to see these classic paintings just to grasp an idea of the depth of it, and it taught him so much, you know. And I think that your paths are destined to cross because of technique and stuff. And I think he's someone that should make a pilgrimage for you guys, for him to go and see you. He's got his first solo show coming up. You know, I've got a lot of his earlier work, which is, we just got this work, which has taken him a while, you know. And of course, you know, he's now moving into different aspects of more, you know, not just caricatures, where you've already been. So I think it's really good that you reached out to him. But for the question I want to ask you, the future for you, like you said, if you had more time, which is the biggest commodity, what paintings over the years hold the most value to you? Do you have a couple in your collection that are like this is like, I will never get rid, like my Goldie painting, I'll never get rid of it. I'll never get rid of my Lady of the Sea. Certain, you know, self-portrait thing I've got here, which I'll never get rid of. What is it in your bearing your soul of your work, which you will not let go of, and maybe people have never seen?
You know what? There's only 2 paintings that I've kept for myself. And oddly, it's because those 2 paintings didn't sell in the shows that they were in. And then when I got them back, I realized, fuck, I don't want to give these away. I never then tried to sell them again. One of them, just a quick story, because this is interesting. One of them went to at the time, a very prestigious gallery in Chelsea in New York. It was a very important moment for me to have this piece hanging in this show. And there was a bit of a theme on the show. So I painted a portrait, and I'm not going to get into the whole backstory, but at the time, my wife and I had just decided that we were going to maybe start trying to have a kid. So I painted a portrait of my wife holding a lily flower pointed at her womb and a pomegranate. And for me, it was a bit of an odd painting. She was all dissected and chopped up. But it was a beautiful painting. But I think the viewers of it it felt so personal. They must have sensed something in it that the universe didn't take it away from me. And eventually we got pregnant almost immediately after I painted that painting. And now my daughter's 5. When that painting came back to me, I rolled it up, put it in the vault, and now that's my daughter's painting. It was the quest to the universe to give us a child, and she came to us.
It was a sacrifice, like an offering, if you like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now
I felt that too. I felt that too with certain paintings. They come back, and as an artist, you get like slightly disgruntled. You're like, why don't they get it? But that's the story of ages for us guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it will continue to do so. But I think the question now, I guess, is that the second question then for that part of this is, do you have a complete separation to it? Because there was a point where I would paint stuff and I'm so attached to it. And I had to learn to kind of, you know, you're on your own now, kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You leave the orphan at the door. Is that a thing for you, or it's become so like, nah, just go?
You know, I go through, and I think most artists probably do this. I go through these journeys with every painting. I spend weeks and weeks developing just on my computer the image. And then once I figured, okay, this is ready to be painted, then I start painting. When that beginning moment, when I first start on canvas, I'm really excited and I can't wait to get going and I want to get painting on it. Then about 2 weeks later, I'm fucking over it. And I'm not finished painting, but I just don't want to see this thing anymore. All I can see in it are the flaws and I just want it to be finished. And then finally I do finish it and I can't look at it anymore. So I put it away for a bit. And then a couple days or a couple weeks later, I'll catch it out of the corner of my eye and think, fuck, that's a pretty good painting. Like, I'm really into it. And then I get this burst of energy where I can't wait for people to look at it and see it. And for me, getting it on the wall in the gallery, that's like the end goal for me. I just want people to see it. I've actually started in the last couple of years wanting to do less shows in art galleries and preferring more to put my work into art fairs, because I know in an art fair, thousands and thousands and thousands of people will see it versus hundreds and hundreds. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's all about, as you said earlier in this interview, seeing it in person is just, it's a different experience. And that's what I want. So me getting it on the wall for people to look at is so exciting that I'm not worried about holding it back, because if I hold it back, no one sees it. And I don't feel bad about letting it go. And that maybe is also part of painting murals, you know, painting out in the streets. You put it out there and then, hey, who knows what's going to happen with it? So
yeah.
You got to let it go.
Well, you know, we're not an art fair, but, you know, hints. We hopefully next year, you know,
we'll get
I'm ordering for 2023. Some small.
I've got an amazing idea for a piece I want to do for you, but
so look, I'm really blessed because not only are you, when we look back on this in 20, 30 years, I really got my head around how the music propels for the future, and I knew that Metalhead, I knew that this music would be important. I knew from the beginning of making it, from the studio I'm in now. I produced Journeyman in this room. I produced Roughest Crew in this room. I produced a lot. The equipment in this room has been with me for 25 years, going back from every studio I had. But interviewing you as a real fine artist, there are not many people that I'm like, oh my God, the word prolific. There's not many prolific artists. Virgil is prolific as a creator. You're prolific, you know, as a creator. I think Tyler, you know, is prolific. I think Dillinger is prolific. There's only, you know, Caliber's a prolific artist in his own right. There's not many, for me. Crash is prolific. You know, the Bio's prolific. The way that Tatters a Crew, it's coming off the back of the shoulder of giants and seeing not only us being true fans of the art form, and then some, where it spins into other things. You know, seeing your work, it blows my mind still.
Well, listen, I hearing you say things like that, you'll never know what that means to me. Like, we didn't even tell the story about the book, the illustration I did.
Oh shit! Yeah, the book.
And like,
tell me the story of the book, because the book cover you were doing.
Here, let me grab it real quick. I keep this book in my studio because I like showing it to people. This means a lot to me. So this is a book. I think his signature is in here somewhere.
Wow.
So this is your book. You can, I mean, probably people already know about the book, but the story with us. So you, as you said, you heard a podcast of me talking or something. Your name came up. I was describing this illustration. Then I guess you went and looked at it. So that's your story with this image. You liked the image. You reached out to me, said, I'd like to use it for the cover of your book. Okay, that's your side of the story. My side goes back, I don't know, 15 years before that. When I was not painting, I was not an artist. I was a drum and bass DJ in Baltimore in the US, where drum and bass wasn't a thing. There was, you know, maybe 100 people that knew about it. And I had a weekly night with some friends and we would play out this crazy music. And I was playing sort of this weird mix of hip hop and drum and bass with hip hop acapellas on it. Crazy. It was just this weird thing. I was basically a teenager. Metalheads, look, I had two of them, and I used to juggle them like a hip hop DJ would juggle the same record which you don't do in drum and bass, but I did it. And then the KRS-One digital track fucking changed it for me. Changed everything. Like, I listened to all 4 versions of that this morning again.
Wow.
And they're all amazing.
I found some tapes with all the versions that no one's heard. I'll have to dig them out.
Yeah. I used to play all of them, even the Armand Van Halen, the what is that, Speed Garage version or whatever. I used to play it. I didn't give a fuck. Anyway, so my journey with you started back then, and then as you know, fast forward 10 years, I had sort of decided that I need to decide between painting art or music, and I was better at painting than I was at producing. So I dropped all the music stuff and went hard on the painting, moved to Berlin and started doing art stuff. And one of the first projects I did was this series called Someday I'll See You There, where I took 4 people who were like the pinnacles of their industry, and I did these illustrations of them as a marble bust. And the idea was, I'm just starting my journey, but if I fucking, like, ultimate goal, I want to be at the status that these people are at. That's why I called it Someday I'll See You There. And fucking less than 4 or 5 years later, you asked me to use it for the cover of your book. And I was like, this is just manifest destiny. I put this goal out there. I'm moving towards my goal. And now here you and I are 10 years later talking about this.
I mean,
and this story for me is that I keep the book here so I can tell people this story.
It's amazing. I mean, it really is. I mean, the thing is, I'm going to bust your balls because it took me 35 motherfucking years. It's like you did it in like half the time. I'm like, and paints in a slower technique. I'm like, oh, this motherfucker.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's the power of manifestation. And I think, you know, you wanted it and you went out there and you absolutely got it and are getting it. And I think for those of you, you know, look at James's work and follow whatever he's doing because it's amazing. And I just hope we can be blessed, you know, in the latter part of the year, in the winter time or the fall or spring, of getting some small pieces or whatever it is, ideas you have. I'm just really happy to know you as a friend also, you know, because coming to see you in Berlin and seeing, you know, the studio it was so awkward because I was so into what you were doing and you're into with the music, and it's mad when you are in that space in a gallery and you're creating, you know, I can't paint without music. It's just it's the meanest thing to do, right? You know, you might do a bit of masking with some blue tape or do some, you know, but for me to like, you know, everything and I'll go around every kind of music for me and what inspires me. But I'm really blessed to have met you at the time that we met, and I can only wish you the best. You know, Aurum Gallery team, I'm loving what we've been doing with this space. You know, COVID, we just about survived. But it's great when, you know, I'm going up to the gallery in 2 weeks, the week after Songkran, which is like the water celebration of cleansing and everything else. But, you know, walking into that gallery, you just get this kind of like this space, you know. And even when I'm in London going to different galleries, not the small stuff in Mayfair where it's like you can swing a cat. You want to go into these big spaces. I take my daughter all the time to these great spaces. You know, a kid sitting down looking at a painting and getting off the iPhone and really experiencing it. It's something else, right? But she's drawing, man. She's doing anime drawing and she's really getting into it. You know, she's showing me stuff on Procreate and she's 10. And I'm like, what? But she likes sketching. She likes pen to paper. And that's the one thing I've always said to her. There's nothing that can beat the pen on the paper. So I hope that you can, you know, maybe come and visit one day or bring your family out.
Hey, we talked about a couple of years ago doing a big wall together. That's
we wanted to.
That's the goal, man. We got to get it.
It's got to happen. So let's just take it one step at a time. But it's been a real pleasure. I think that, you know, I'm interviewing people and talking to people that I really want to get into. And I think it's a good thing for people to understand when they look at your work. You know, you don't have to explain it, but it gives them a better viewpoint. And that's the thing that they can go, okay, how your mind works. So, you know, I'm really, really pleased. I mean, not only have you been transcending all of these different styles, but the one last thing that freaks me out that I wanted to touch a base on is the paint peeling, man. You've gone from shattered you know, so let's have a look at this piece. Look at this piece, guys. Look at this. I mean, just hold it still. What gave you, what is this for you in your mind? Is it that kind of gnarly warehouse in, you know, these walls that have been like years of abuse where they're just peeling away and there's all these layers on top? Just explain to me that.
Well, it started, so like we said before, I learned how to paint realistically and then immediately wanted to find ways to just blow it up and bring a bit of the graphic graffiti, urban art sort of sensibility into these traditional style paintings. And then that's how I got to the fracturing and the moving and shifting of pieces. The peeling thing is basically the same thing. It's instead of moving things, I'm just cutting them and removing instead of moving. And yes, if you were in my studio, you can see that this is an old building and the paint is literally peeling off the walls. And when I started painting murals and graffiti and stuff in Berlin, we were going to these abandoned spaces and the walls were just falling off. So it kind of crept into my mind. And then I just tried it one day. It worked pretty cool. And then I've been developing this technique over the last 4 or 5 years, this peeling technique.
You've really taken these techniques somewhere else, because from the prints that we sold that had the peeling with the lilac and the kind of light pink, baby pink, they just went because people can see there's something else to them. Even you know, your printing techniques as well are second to none. But what I loved about it is this idea of, you know, it's the idea of impermanence, but this image that's like, it's, you know, it's graphically changing in the way that it's curling on itself. But I remember being in Garrison Avenue with Bio, and Cess used to say when they went onto the roof, some of the wall space had so many paintings on it that huge chunks started peeling off, and you could hold it sideways and you could see like these are all pieces, man.
Yeah,
and that's fascinating, I find. So I just
like
wanted
archaeology.
Archaeology, you know, which we look at what Vils has been doing. The idea of Vils going through the posters his dad used to put up in the, you know, in the 60s and the 50s and the political stuff. So it's all connected. But I think for you, not only styles that you've mastered as a true artist, that there is, you know, I like to think I've done it in music. That's all I can say. You're up there, man. Like, you're doing just style after style. I'm really, you know, you've now did exploding. I'm like, this, it can't be stopped. So please, slow down. It's been amazing. Thank you, James. And I love to the family. And I hope we get to see you at some point. And let me send you the new joint. I'm going to send you the new album.
Oh, hell yeah. Thank you. Let's do it. Hey, when you're in London, I was talking to Voider. Next time you're in London, I'm going to pop up and grab both of you for my podcast, and we'll all go out to dinner.
We should do that.
I don't know if I can do the yoga stuff, man.
No, but well, you know, I did it this morning. I'm happy. But I think I'd like you and Voider to, because he's a good kid.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while.
I've been taking him to yoga, and he's a great boy, man. And he's a sponge, man. He's a great boy. He's got a lot of miles. God bless you, James, and thank you so much. This has been Aurum Gallery, me interviewing the mighty James Bullough, the man. And we have been friends and fans for one another for many, many years. And
shout out to Findak for helping us.
Yeah, Findak, big shout out to Findak for connecting us. And watch this space, man. He's going to be dropping in the gallery at some point. Can't say when, but it's going to happen. And love you very much, man. See you later.
All right. Take care.